Um, Locomotion is another big one, right? There's there's a few, sort of methods of locomotion that are kind of the standard nowadays. Um, but a lot of things that you want to look at when you're sort of looking at first time users or users that are not too experienced with VR. Um, and these are sort of based on sort of research that has been done since the start of like this VR thing. So one is constant velocity, right? You you basically tend to want to not do a lot of like acceleration and deceleration when you're moving. So again, a lot of the stuff that you do in like flat games where you want to have this nice smooth acceleration when you push your thumbstick, and then when you let go, you kind of slowly stop. That tends to actually cause a lot more motion sickness. So you want to just kind of start and then stop. Um, tend to want to have a static point of reference. So driving simulators tend to be good for this just because you have a literal frame of reference around you. This helps to kind of trick your brain into or rather it helps to ground things, right? It helps to trick your brain thinking like, okay, I am actually sitting here and I've got this thing and I can see how things are moving because I've got the static point of reference. Something that still tends to be done nowadays is this dynamic FOV. This is sort of a virtual static point of reference because you kind of tunnel vision, right? And you've got this literally static point of view around you, and so that it kind of looks like you're looking through a window. So that helps a lot with motion sickness. And then there's like the teleportation and snap turning. So instead of smooth turning, instead of like smooth motion, a lot of games nowadays are doing a lot of the smooth motion just because gamers are getting more used to sort of like doing that. But there's always going to be teleportation and snap turning as sort of like usually the defaults. So the static point of reference. So when you don't have a static point of reference, the first thing I did when I got my first VR headset was I did a roller coaster and I almost immediately got sick because it didn't really give you there was a static point of reference. If you look down, you could see the cart, but if you're looking straight ahead, you got nothing. Right. So all you're seeing is this track and the environment as you're moving. Immediately get sick. Um, so having that static point of reference, go easy on your user. If you're doing a first time thing, don't immediately throw them into this high speed, twisty sort of environment. Um, so if you can see over here, there's a static point of reference. You've got a cockpit. It's not really obvious here, on a flat screen, but in VR, having that static point of reference is a huge help in terms of grounding you. Different controls, right? Like when you're looking at controls, you can do a bunch of things. You can utilize a bunch of things like motion tracking, position orientation, velocity. Um, One thing that you can do that is tends to be overlooked now, but is still actually really useful is using your gaze, right? Where are you looking? Um, this can be subtle, like not starting, let's say, a cutscene or something, unless the user is actually looking in that direction, not starting an animation or something. So that's actually still really useful. But with motion tracking, there's a lot of interesting things you can do, like tracking velocity, right? Whether it's linear or angular. This game I've been playing actually one thing I didn't actually mention in the benefits is actually fitness. I've been playing this. One of the games I've been playing is this boxing game that tracks your velocity, your controller velocity, as literally the power of your punches. And so I'm usually just completely wiped out after about half an hour playing this. But that's something that you can do is that because you can track position and velocity, you can make use of that. Also things like the spin rate and whatnot. So there's a lot of really interesting things you can do, and also hand tracking, which has been something that the Quest 2 has introduced um, quite actually impressively, right? So instead of having a controller, now one thing nice about hand tracking is that it does tend to be a more sort of an easier introduction to a first-time user, like somebody who's not played games, not somebody who's not played games at all. Um, To us, to gamers, like, you get a motion controller, it's like this is perfect. There's buttons, there's thumbsticks, it's great. To somebody who doesn't know it, like first time I handed one to my wife, she's like, it's just all thumbs, right? It's like, I don't know what I'm doing. So having something where you've got hand tracking and you're just literally reaching out and just flipping switches or touching something or kind of doing the whole Minority Report thing, right? That becomes a really good potential alternative for experiences that are perhaps for people that are not as used to gaming. Um, so we've got so extending the experience is also another interesting one, right? You've got bespoke physical controllers. You've got haptic controllers that are coming out. You've got this really goofy one over here. I think it's still in development. Um, it's a smell-o-vision. I think they call it smell-o-vision. It's literally just kind of like simulating odors, right? Smells, which can actually be kind of interesting. Um, you've got things like this where in the environment you might have like fans that will kind of give you the sensation of wind, right, or acceleration. Um, and this one is actually a really interesting study that there's a lot of really interesting science going on there. It's beyond me, but where it tracks your eyes, and the eye saccades, like how your eyes are kind of looking around, and it sort of it sort of virtually shifts the camera subtly to make you turn, right? Physically while thinking you're going straight. And so it virtually sort of extends the room. I don't know how it works specifically, but I tried it and it's actually really surprisingly effective. So let me see. Yeah. So again, performance. The so this thing on performance, biggest thing here is you design for your experience, or you optimize and design based on your experience, right? Whether you're looking at a small enclosed environment like an escape room, or big virtual environment, big open environment like PUBG or Population One, right? And so you want to figure out what you're doing first, settle on that, and then kind of figure out how you're going to optimize that, because you're going to be able to do different things based on what you're designing around. Um, Smoke and mirrors, that's a big thing in VR, right? Fake what you can, bake what you can, bake your lighting, bake your shadows. The less that the GPU has to do, the better, because then all of that computation power can be used for tracking your position, doing all sorts of gameplay stuff, right? Anti-aliasing is actually a surprisingly big thing with VR, um, because it does help with shimmering in the distance, which can kind of take you out of the experience. Um, oh yeah, and the last thing is actually really don't overcomplicate things. Like, whatever you can fake, if you can have a static image in the background, that works, especially if you're looking at, like, distant stuff where you don't really get that parallax. If you can get a static image, you know, use it, right? Do what you can to kind of simplify as much as possible. So this is the last kind of bit. I mentioned earlier frameworks. There are a handful of interesting frameworks out there. There's the one that we offer as a package, XR Interaction Toolkit. There's VRTK, which seems to have slowed down development a bit, but it's still in active development. It's an open source toolkit that kind of similarly has a lot of drop-in components, locomotion, interactions, things like that. And there's the OpenXR and the Oculus SDK, which kind of handle, well, OpenXR is sort of the open thing for, like, but typically like Valve, like the Vive and whatnot. And there's the Oculus SDK, which you will actually need if you're kind of looking at doing hand tracking. And so that's the Oculus specific one that you'll need to develop for Quest specifically. But otherwise, the XR Interaction Toolkit does give you stuff that'll go cross-platform or cross-device.